counted. Sorry about that. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the tip-off. Did you count me in?
Yes, he did.
I have my run sheet in front of Tyler. That is why. All right. Welcome to the tip-off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 8-game NBA slate and 7-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. It is Tuesday. Hello. Welcome. I am joined today by Greg Ehrenberg and Eric Lindquist. It's Comedian Tuesday around here. Guys, how we doing?
Wow. Shots fired everywhere. You're going after Tyler. You're going after Greg and I. What is happening right now?
I swear I did not see his count in.
He absolutely.
Okay, never mind. Disregard.
All right. I'm texting Jordan again. And I mean, we had just gotten rid of Jordan. I told him that he doesn't produce my shows anymore. I like it better when Tyler produces. But now I'm telling him we need him back because of all these counting mishaps.
Yeah.
I don't like math. It's probably on me. How we doing, guys? What's new? Greg, this is the first time you've been on this week. Tell us something funny.
Well, I mean, I'm waiting for Jordan to text me back right now. Is Jordan watching? Jordan, if you're watching, text me. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. Like, what funny has happened recently? I got good sleep last night.
Did not. So that's probably where we're at right now. What's the latest with the raccoon mishap?
Oh, I don't. It's just gone. Like I don't like. It's not sad or anything. He went back home. He crawled out of the chimney and went to his family. There's actually 3. There ended up being 3 raccoons in the chimney. It was a mom, a dad, and then I assume I'm kind of like creating a little bit, but I think there was like a mom and a dad and a kid. But yeah, they just left.
Does that make you Goldilocks?
No, I think it just makes me a disgruntled homeowner.
And the 3 raccoons. Oh my gosh. Oh, Kayla,
Eric,
you're so wholesome. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I went to bed at 2 a.m., so it's going to be a fun show today.
All right.
Buckle up, everybody. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR, and every other sport that is in season. Let's talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. All right, let's get to our bad beats. Last night, we saw multiple ceiling games for multiple point guards as De'Aaron Fox, Russell Westbrook, and Steph Curry tore up the slate. So how did you guys fare? Eric, we'll start with you.
Yeah, NBA was good. MLB was very, very bad. So there's that. Oakland, anytime the top stack, or the most popular stack, should I say, goes off, I'm not going to win an MLB unless it's Coors Field and I just go way, way overweight. But that rarely ever happens too. So having Oakland go off was not a good situation for me, but we saw Steve Buzzard at the top of the leaderboards, a nice 6-figure day for him. DeColts is just kind of the man when it comes to all things MLB, always doing all the great stuff behind the paywall for subs to go through the process. He did a Monday video and he was rewarded with a nice, huge day. So way to go, Steve.
So for me, I had a bunch of futures before the season on the Denver Nuggets, and yeah, that's no good because we had Jamal Murray tore his ACL. On the positive end, I was able, like, as soon as he got hurt, we've seen those injuries enough in the NBA that not that, I mean, we've gone over. I'm not a doctor. Some other people more qualified with medical advice on our YouTube channel. However, I've seen those injuries enough that when you saw a non-contact knee injury for Jamal Murray, it was likely going to be bad. So I did cash out the Nuggets bets for a profit basically immediately when I saw him get hurt. But I would have I thought there was very good value on my Nuggets futures tickets, and I would have liked to have played those out because I was pretty high on the Nuggets this year, and not so much anymore. Jokic still for MVP, but I think the Denver's hopes of winning the Western Conference and the championship are pretty much dead now.
All right, let's talk our NBA news. The Jazz are resting Joe Ingles and Royce O'Neal on this back-to-back. Jordan Clarkson is doubtful, and there's no word on Mike Conley's status yet. Greg, who are you targeting in the aftermath of that news tonight?
Yeah, well, in the ever-evolving news that is the NBA, I wrote an article not very long ago this afternoon talking about the Boomer Bust tool on Awesemo.com and some of the best plays and fades from it. And one of the guys that came out as one of the top fades was Donovan Mitchell at the time. The reason being was because I thought everybody was coming back for the Jazz. Mike Conley's not listed on the injury report. I assume he plays today. Jordan Clarkson had upgraded to questionable after missing the last few games, so I assumed he was going to be back. And then not so much. Jordan Clarkson downgraded to doubtful, and then, like you said, Royce O'Neal and Joe Ingles out. So Donovan Mitchell goes from a fade to somebody to play. I like Mike Conley now because I assume that he's going to be in. Bojan Bogdanovic, he makes for a pretty decent play in the mid-range. The one concern here, and I'm going to ask you about this, Eric. I know we usually don't try to predict blowouts, but we have a game here where the Jazz are favored by 17.5 points against the Thunder team that is not playing to win games anymore. So is this a game where you're weighing blowout risk at all?
I was thinking about it in terms of like, I try never to. I really push back against it, but this is just a gigantic number. This really kind of sticks out. But also, now that you've got basically a limited rotation, we kind of know where the production is going to come out of. If they do go out and nuke them and they're up 20 in the fourth quarter, it probably meant that Donovan Mitchell got there. So I think Donovan Mitchell isn't necessarily like at risk. Bogdanovic, we know that he's shooting dependent. We saw yesterday a decent enough outing out of him there. Going to Mike Conley, who we had talked a little bit before the show. He's going to be playing. He's not on the injury report. Like going that direction as well. Maybe not necessarily on FanDuel where it's 7K, 6,900, still a big number on DK. I don't know. I think that there's like a limited enough rotation that the production is condensed where I don't have to weigh in the blowout as much. But if I ever were going to, this is definitely a spot to tread lightly because it's very rare. This is like a Golden State 2015 or 2016 kind of number where they were just blowing teams completely out of the water. And if you didn't get Klay Thompson or Steph Curry to go off in 3 quarters, you were basically holding the bag at the end of the night.
Eric, what's that on your shirt?
It's a pineapple.
Oh, cute.
Little pineapple, like a little pineapple drink. Travis Matthew. I like their stuff.
Great brand. Yes. Not an ad. Kyle Lowry has been ruled out for rest, which means the Raptors should stand out as popular plays once again this evening. Eric, who are you prioritizing in their matchup versus the Hawks?
So, I mean, we're kind of back on the Malachi Flynn situation. We're back on the Chris Boucher, who can just put up a crazy upside. But primarily, the guy that I want to talk about is Pascal Siakam, who I think has been burning people here and there. Only put up 27.5 over on FanDuel the other night in 36 minutes against New York. That was against New York. We're looking at a place against Atlanta where I can't imagine that he won't be one of my higher spend up options today. We do have 3 pretty solid options in Paul George, in the aforementioned Donovan Mitchell, and in Pascal Siakam. I'm going to be happy to get to a lot of them. We have no 10K guys to go up and pay for on this slate. We now have Malachi Flynn, who we know gets inserted basically into that point guard role. I would like to see him starting, continue to see that going forward, but still got up to 27 minutes with Lowry back against the Knicks. Happy to get over the field there. 36 minutes or so, projecting him for 35 minutes. Very, very happy about Malachi Flynn on this slate.
I have a question for you, Eric. You mentioned Chris Boucher there. I'm struggling with his minutes because Khem Birch is in the rotation now for the Toronto Raptors. He played 18 minutes his first game with the team, and I think there's a chance he starts to play more. Do you think this could hurt the production for Chris Boucher and cut into his playing time at all?
Yes and no. So Chris Boucher, I'm curious. Like that's actually a really good question. I think it's just from a pure like an offensive upside. Like, I mean, Khem Birch played very limited minutes first time out here. I think that's kind of going to be the trend for him. He's kind of a filler. He's not necessarily he's not going to be getting the run he got in Orlando. Maybe it caps it a tiny bit, but we've seen like offensive explosion with Chris Boucher, where if he goes out and plays well, he's going to get those minutes extended. And if he doesn't, he's going to dud and that lineup is dead. So you just kind of move on with your life already. So it'll just really depend on how popular he ends up being as ownership starts to update. I think over on FanDuel, 7,800 is a number you don't really have to deal with as much. But going over to DK, where he's going to be you're able to play 2 centers and he's under 7K at 6,900. I do like getting to a little bit of him here. Ownership hasn't updated for a lot of this news, but we had him basically single digits, a low number there against Atlanta. On the other side, up against Capella, who's the only guy there for Atlanta, that's not the best, but I'm happy to get over the field on Chris Boucher for sure.
So I only gave him 22 minutes. So his minutes were not impacted last game. However, OG Anunoby was resting last game. So now we have Anunoby back, and his minutes have to come from somewhere, right? So Anunoby is going to play his minutes, but I also think Rodney Hood, he was not in the rotation a week ago. He's back now. And I'm just kind of looking at this team that's had pretty inconsistent minutes for Chris Boucher all season. And I just think there's a pretty good chance that he's going to split center minutes with Kem Birch. I think Pascal Siakam's going to play some center minutes, and they're going to play times where it's Pascal Siakam at the 5, OG Anunoby at the 4, and neither Birch nor Boucher are on the court. So I have pretty big concerns about Boucher's playing time going forward. So I'm not sure that he's somebody I'm going to get to a significant amount, but it's something I'm going to have to think about more. Obviously, we still have about 4.5 hours until the slate lock. So I'm definitely going to look at what Alex has projected and compare it to mine and see if maybe we'll have to reconsider. But yeah, right now I'm just struggling to give minutes to Kem Birch, Chris Boucher, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. But the two guys that I think are very safe, like Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, their minutes aren't going anywhere. So with all these guys out for Toronto right now, the guys that are the priority plays for me are Siakam and Malachi Flynn.
Okay, Greg, on the other side of the ball, Hawks star Trae Young is questionable, which could lead to a ton of potential value. So which players stick out to you in the event that he sits?
All right. So I think the other thing to talk about here, since this is the same game, right, with all these guys out for the Raptors, this is probably a pretty good matchup for Atlanta. So Clint Capella, I think, is a good center option with or without Trae Young. Trae Young himself, I think, is a good play if he ends up starting. If he's out, Lou Williams, I think, would be somebody to get to. Lou Williams, who has played pretty inconsistent minutes with Atlanta, not dissimilar to what happened when he was in Los Angeles, but the playing time over the last handful of games since he's been active for Atlanta, Lou Williams played 30 minutes, 26, 18, 23, 18, and 29. So playing time all over the board, but I think there's pretty substantial upside there if Trae Young is out. Another guy to consider without Trae Young would be Brandon Goodwin, who drew the start yesterday in place of Trae Young, and they're playing 37 minutes, scored 35 fantasy points. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to project him play pretty big minutes if Trae Young is out again. But if Trae Young is in, then I think we could definitely ignore Lou Williams and Brandon Goodwin.
Yeah, Brandon Goodwin would probably be it's just kind of a hurry up and wait slate is kind of the way that I look at it, where we're just kind of waiting for whatever is going to happen from that situation. It is the first game right out of the bat, but if you get Trae Young out, Brandon Goodwin, I would assume, would probably become the most popular or one of the most popular value plays on this entire slate. Hard to get away from projected 30s minutes, 3,500 over on DK and 3,700 over on Fanduel. Lou Williams is really kind of the fascinating case study. If he were to be super popular, I think that there's a lot of merit to the fade there. If he ends up not being as popular, I definitely think I would want to be getting over the field. We know that he can be shooting dependent. We know kind of the player that he was with the Clippers. That's kind of what it is. You're if he gets hot, you're in good shape. And if he doesn't, that lineup's dead. Similar to Boucher. Maybe just play Boucher and Lou Williams together in a lot of lineups. That sounds like fun. But Clint Capella, also somebody that I think 8,500, not that he would be seeing any extra offensive output that's like extreme with Trae Young out, but I think it does probably help his profile a little bit. Bogdanovich, much more interesting if you get Trae Young off the floor.
Marc Gasol and Andre Drummond are both questionable for tonight's tilt versus the Hornets. Eric, should they both sit? How much Montrezl Harrell and Kyle Kuzma is too much?
I'm kind of just terrified of this entire situation. And I don't even know if I want Andre Drummond in or out. Marc Gasol being out would definitely help Andre Drummond, I think, even a little bit. We saw very, very limited minutes for Marc Gasol in the last time out. I think I would have to get to a lot of Andre Drummond again over on FanDuel. He grades out phenomenally well, even in 24 minutes that Alex hasn't plugged in for. I think that's just a scary situation that I think I would have to be over the field on, no matter how bad he was. Now, if you get Drummond and Gasol out in that situation, or Gasol and Drummond, I like getting to Montrezl Harrell, and it's just going to be a hold your nose and plunge. I don't know what else to do in that whole situation. Who else gets those front court minutes? And Kyle Kuzma, we've seen have some decent rebounding output. He's been very, very bad of late, but I think I'd have to be on board today, and that just makes me really not like this slate.
Yeah, it's just looking at the Lakers injury report and Marc Gasol question. By the way, I think Marc Gasol has been the Lakers' best center so far this year, but it looks like they're doing whatever they can to not get him minutes by whether signing Drummond or somebody's out and just barely playing Gasol over the last 3 games. Gasol has played a total of 5 minutes. So it's not like he's been a priority by any means for the Lakers. So even if Drummond is out, Gasol not somebody that I'd be looking to target. He started most of the season for them and generally hasn't produced good fantasy results. I think from a real life perspective, he's been okay, except it's also in comparison to Andre Drummond, who's really struggled this year, Montrezl Harrell, who's really struggled this year on defense. So of the three, that's why I think Marc Gasol is the best of the group, but that doesn't necessarily make him fantasy viable. From a fantasy standpoint, Andre Drummond is the best fantasy producer there. And if he starts, like Eric said, I don't feel comfortable about it, but I have to look at some of the projections, and he's such a good permanent producer. And with no Anthony Davis, no LeBron James, Andre Drummond's still a guy that we've seen produce pretty good upside for the Lakers, not consistently, except definitely the upside to do it. Other guys, let's say that Andre Drummond is out, like you said, Montrezl Harrell, who's priced down on Fanduel and Draftkings just because of the losing minutes to Andre Drummond. So if Drummond is out, I'm going to have to say that Montrezl Harrell will be in play for me, and maybe a slight amount of Kyle Kuzma and Dennis Schroeder, but really more of secondary options. By the slate locks, I'm sure there's going to be, like 30 more value plays that open up, and then I won't have interest in any of these guys anyway.
PJ Washington has already been ruled out, while Terry Rozier is doubtful to play, creating tons of opportunity up and down the Hornets roster. Greg, who sticks out to you the most?
Yeah, I mean, both sides of this game, like nobody's playing. If we look at the opening day starting lineups for the Hornets and for the Lakers, how many players are left of those 10 starters? Like, it's not many. There's Devante Graham on the Charlotte side, and then for the Lakers, I'm trying to like Dennis Schroeder, and that's it.
That's it.
Like there's very few starters left. So for DFS purposes, this is a side that I really like to target both games of, because there's a whole bunch of value. The defense figures to be pretty poor because there's so many guys out. So Devante Graham, high priority play. Cody Zeller, he's a very good value play. Jalen McDaniels, who's played well recently, he's going to get a boost in production and playing time. And then overall, I think the best value play here is Brad Wanamaker, who very spotty results as a chalk play over the last couple of years, but maybe not even spotty. I think he's just been flat out crap in almost all of them. But even so, Brad Wanamaker, it's hard to not expect him to play substantial minutes and have a pretty high usage rate as long as he starts with all these guys out for Charlotte.
I'm going to edit that clip and just have it be Greg Ehrenberg, Brad Wanamaker's crap, and then just send it to him to make sure that he plays well tonight, because I really like Brad Wanamaker as well. Just got to light a fire on the guy, but came out of the gate pretty well coming into Charlotte here. As long as we're seeing mid-20s minutes, I like getting to a little bit of him there at 3,800 over on DK. Less of a priority. You don't really have to go there. 4,600 over on FanDuel, so kind of a write-off for me there. I'm really curious what you think of Caleb Martin, who's 3,100. I've been trying to get away from him today. Also, the flat min over on FanDuel. He's kind of the one guy that we haven't talked about. Miles Bridges, the dunk master flex, as I like to call him here now, because that was just the most vicious thing I've ever seen. Best in-game dunk I've ever seen in my life. But I really obviously like Devante Graham. Hard to get away from there. Miles Bridges is all right, but what are you kind of doing on the side for Caleb Martin? Because Jalen McDaniels is going to be super popular, 4,300. We're seeing that in the ownership. That makes sense over on DK. But Caleb Martin kind of seems like a viable pivot, no?
Not for the context of this slate. I just think there's going to be so many viable value options, and he's not a good fantasy producer. So for the season, he's playing 13.6 minutes per game, averaging 11.3 DraftKings points. I also don't think he's going to play a massive amount of minutes. Not to say he won't play more minutes than normal, but even if we give him double his minutes for the season, then we're looking at 27 minutes and a baseline of 22 DraftKings points for Caleb Martin. And I don't think he plays 27 minutes. So more often than not, I think if you were to give me an over-under of 20 and a half DraftKings points for Martin, I'd probably take the under on that number. And the other issue too is just there's so much value. If this was a slate, right, where we had, Jokic, Steph Curry, LeBron James, just like all the stars, and a really lacking amount of value, then I look at Martin and be like, oh, you know what? I'm fine with getting somebody who's around min price that might score 20 DraftKings points. But in the context of this slate, I don't want good value plays when I could have great value plays. So I don't think he's somebody who makes the cut for me.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me too. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. We need to get that like button up, guys. And always put your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to them throughout the show. Keep it nice. That's going to take us to our one-on-one segment. In these battles between stars, which player would you rather have an NBA, DFS, or prop bets tonight? We've got Paul George is projected to see increased production with Kawhi Leonard still out, while Donovan Mitchell is coming off his second consecutive 42 real point game last night and will be without Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles, and perhaps Mike Conley. Both project out as popular spin-up options on this slate. But who are you siding with more, George or Mitchell, Eric?
I'm going to have to go I mean, this is kind of just changed. I wrote this question before everything went down, and
yes.
I'm just kind of updating to figure out. I think, yeah, this is crazy. I think it's probably going to be Donovan Mitchell here at this point in time. I mean, you take Ingles, you take Ingles off the floor specifically. You take Royce O'Neal, who isn't like any kind of a usage guy whatsoever, but Donovan Mitchell has just been so good. And I know we talked about a little bit about the blowout risk, and Paul George has been exceptional here in a limited sample here this season without Kawhi. But I really like both of them. But Donovan Mitchell, I think, kind of gets the priority for me here. We'll see where ownership ends up getting to, because before it was Paul George kind of clearing away the number one guy there, sitting around in the 40s of ownership on DK. But as things start to update, we'll see that ownership come up for Donovan Mitchell. I guess figuring out how him and Conley are going to be sharing the floor is an important factor to look in, and obviously the guys on the deeper dive will help you with that. But I think it's probably going to be Donovan Mitchell for me now if I'm getting any kind of an ownership discount.
I just want to go back to, I think, a little bit of recency bias to call that Miles Bridges dunk the best in-game dunk you've ever seen. I mean, I don't know what other dunks you've seen, but somebody brought up a good point in the chat. Like, Vince Carter jumped clear over a 7-footer in the Olympics.
That wasn't in an NBA game, though.
Did you say an NBA game specifically?
Oh, I guess I didn't. So if you want to say, but it was the best in-game NBA dunk I've ever seen.
All right. I don't even think it was the best one this year. I thought the Anthony Edwards dunk this year was the best one.
I'm biased. I'm a Timberwolves fan who's sad that we don't have LaMelo Ball. So,
I thought Westbrook's was the best, by the way.
Westbrook's had some vicious ones. Yeah, it's like, which one exactly?
A few weeks ago, the throwdown. I don't know.
So the overall best in-game dunk, and this is just off the top of my head, so it could be wrong, but I'm going to say DeAndre Jordan dunking on Brandon Knight as one of them, just because I thought it was overall hilarious, and just the overall facial expression he made afterwards. That, or same team, Blake Griffin, a couple of Blake Griffin dunks, actually. The one dunking over Kendrick Perkins, because I think Kendrick Perkins deserves to be dunked on all the time. Or the one where he dunked over Mozgov, just the way that he jumped seemed like 30 feet in the air and then just like threw the ball down on the rim. Like that was almost like a scene from something like Space Jam. But to me, those are like my favorite in-game dunks I can remember off the top of my head. As for this question now, circling back on that.
You remember the question?
Yeah, I do. It was Paul George and Donovan Mitchell.
Okay, good.
I still have to dock Donovan Mitchell a little bit for the spread in this game. It's the tail end of a back-to-back. Utah's favored by 16.5. The Thunder have been awful lately. Sorry, Kayla. But I still have to think that they're going to be a little conservative with Mitchell's minutes in this spot. He's played such a big workload recently, not just in minutes, but also usage when he's been on the court. So my gut feeling here is that they limit Mitchell to somewhere in the neighborhood of like 32 minutes or so, which doesn't seem very restrictive. But when you consider that he's somebody he's priced as if he's playing, like 36 to 38 minutes per game with such massive usage, I have to dock Mitchell a little bit, and that's going to put Paul George as a higher priority for me.
All right. Robert Williams and Andre Drummond have been disappointing of late, but both look to be in a solid bounce back spot tonight. Greg, should Drummond give it a go? Who would you have more interest in tonight, Williams or Drummond?
Well, if Drummond's in, it's him for sure. I mean, we have him rated so highly in our Boom Bust tour right now, one of the top overall plays on the slate. I just have no clue if he's going to end up playing. And I mean, as for the question and about him disappointing as of late, I mean, we're going back one game that he disappointed. Because if we go before then, bringing up the box scores for Drummond, he had 2 good games in a row, if I remember correctly. So Andre Drummond, last game was a total disaster. He absolutely sucked. So that game against the Knicks. Also, I mean, the Knicks are a fairly difficult matchup, but he played 25 minutes, 17.5 fantasy points. The game before against the Nets, 22 minutes, 37.75. The game before that against the Heat, 27 minutes, 38.5 Draftkings points. So, I mean, if we're going to say disappointed lately, it's extreme recency bias. So I'm not too concerned about one game. Andre Drummond, as long as he's active.
Yeah, 4 fouls there too. It just didn't look good yesterday, and that's fine. Just kind of throwing that out the window. Andre Drummond's got to be the guy. I guess I brought it up. Robert Williams is kind of your guy. I kind of attach you to Robert Williams a little bit because I believe he's your highest owned best ball. How are your best ball teams, by the way? How'd you end up?
So I have, off the top of my head, I think I had 71 teams make it to the second round, which I was,
nice number.
Which I was pretty happy with. So doing good there. Doing good.
Nice. Okay. Well, don't play Robert Williams, play Andre Drummond is kind of the way that I look at it.
Quick note, the Westbrook dunk I was referring to was from March 30th against Charlotte. There you go.
Okay.
Amazing. She just put in the research. She's like, I got to find this thing. I'm going to Google it afterwards. I don't know. Have you seen the Miles Bridges dunk, Kayla?
I just went to my tweets.
All right. I need you to pull up the Miles Bridges dunk and watch it in real time. While we go to the next segment. After we start the intro, you need to look at the Miles Bridges.
Yeah, I'm
dunk.
not driving the show or anything, Eric.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'll send it to you. Okay. This is a professional show that we're doing.
I think the other thing too, I mean, if there wasn't like copyright errors, we could just spend the last 30 minutes of the show just playing the dunks.
That would be sweet.
Look how good our content is. We just have other people's dunk showing here, or we just sit here and do nothing.
I wish we could do that. Oh, well. Let's head over to our MLB portion of the show, starting with Biggest Bat. It's time to head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Stanton plus 350, Acuna plus 360. I said that wrong. Shaw plus 370, Grichuk plus 374, and Yelich plus 380. These baseball names. Eric, we'll start with you.
3 for 5 is a good average in baseball, though.
That's hilarious. That
Over
was
500.
really, how sharp was that off the top of your head? Jeez, God, I'm operating at a lower frequency today for sure. But I like going to anybody in that New York game, that New York Yankees Toronto Blue Jays game. Hyun-Jin Ryu has been a very functional pitcher last couple of years. I mean, with the Dodgers, he was phenomenal, pretty darn good. Still with Toronto last year, but I like going to the direction of Grichuk here. Jameson Taillon, just not somebody that I'm that worried about. This ballpark too in Tampa Bay just is kind of we're seeing it in the total here, sitting up around 9. I think getting anybody from that game, so I'll take some of the longer odds, go to the Grichuk side and move on. All
right, Greg. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm looking actually. So, I mean, all these odds are pretty flat across the board. They're pretty similar, but give me Giancarlo Stanton. I agree with what Eric said about Hyun-Jin Ryu and that he has been one of the better pitchers in baseball over the last few years. But even so, Giancarlo Stanton has absolutely crushed left-handed pitching over the last few, well, really for his whole career, but especially for the last few years. And then also that ballpark they're playing at, just like this minor league ballpark. There's an elementary school in the outfield. Like there's kids like you hit every time somebody hits a home run, like a kid gets hurt in the outfield. So like that's also something where at least some of the Vegas data we've seen so far, the games being played in that ballpark have had really inflated totals. So I think everything that's telling us there is that it's going to be a very hitter friendly park. So I mean, with that in mind, Giancarlo Stanton against the lefty, even if it's a good lefty, give me him as the most likely player to hit a home run of this group.
Okay. Now we move on to Biggest Arm. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight, and which is the worst? We've got Jack Flaherty, 6.5 Ks, Kevin Gausman, 6.5, Steven Strasburg, 6.5, Kyle Hendricks, 5.5, and Dylan Bundy, 5.5. I don't know what's happening in my voice. Greg.
So looking over these numbers, let's see. As for the worst, I don't know if I feel that strong about any of them as unders. I guess I'll go with Kyle Hendricks just because he has really massive home road splits for his career. Kyle Hendricks on the road has an ERA of about a full run higher for his career than when he pitches at Wrigley. So always been a guy and at Wrigley for his career, because I remember looking it up earlier when I was doing the MLB strategy show, 2.55 ERA. It was for his career when he pitches at home, and then close to 4 on the road for his career. So Kyle Hendricks, always better pitcher when he is at home. So give me the under on 5.5 K. He's also a guy who's generally a pitch to contact, not a high strikeout guy. As for the over, though, I don't think there's anybody that I really want to attach myself to. So just slight lean towards the under on Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah, I think if I had to go any direction, I don't know, maybe going. It's so hard today on this slate to be looking at. By the way, use that top pitchers tool because that thing has been fire. Pretty much every starting pitcher went off yesterday, so that was unenjoyable. I thought that I had a pretty good situation. We did hit the over on the prop for who was pitching for Tampa Bay last night. That was the main spot. Just basically target Texas every single time out all season long. But I think I'm going to be siding possibly on the Strasburg side of it if I had to take an over. If you look at the odd shopper odds form right now, the under's a little bit of plus money. So you're looking at a situation over 6.5. Cardinals lineup that's a little bit righty heavy. I'm happy to go that direction.
All right. And that concludes the MLB portion of the show. We're going to move over now to No House Advantage, prop or not. We'll get back to the NBA and look at No House Advantage's props of the day for key players. Do you like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Devante Graham over under 4.5 assists. Eric, we'll go right back to you.
Yeah, so Devante Graham, we got to be taking overs on him in this spot. It's just kind of sets up too well. We talked about how shorthanded they are, and anytime during the course of a season, I can't say the words. I'm sorry. The words are difficult today. Yeah, I don't even know what it is necessarily, but I like the over. The over is good on him. There we are. I said it correctly. So yeah, Devante Graham, big fan. Shorthanded. We've seen the situation multiple times this season where targeting guys on teams where there's just a bunch of body bags everywhere. You got to be on the over.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. Just basically everybody on the Hornets. So like not even Devante Graham. You could say that everybody on the Hornets, anybody who had a prop that was set this morning, was assuming that Terry Rozier was in, was assuming PJ Washington was in, because these guys were all ruled out after the fact. So, I mean, you can make a case for any prop that's on No House Advantage for any Hornets players. I haven't looked at every single one of them because, hey, I mean, No House Advantage, they got, it's like 500 props. It's the biggest number in the history of numbers. They got everything. But but Hornets, like, so Devante Graham, you're going to have to take overs on his numbers, and then just scrolling through to see what other players there are totals for here. Your guy, Miles Bridges. Let's see. We have some Bridges numbers in here. I'm sure I would like overs on him. Definitely Devante Graham. But the point being here, there's a lot of value on everybody that's on the Hornets.
All right. The chat is fiery today, by the way. I thought I said keep it nice.
Oh, the good thing I don't have it up. That's great.
Oh.
Also, another strategy for NHA, just to speak to that too, stack it up. Like stack up the Charlotte Hornets in it, because if you get 0, who cares? You're going for the top spot. Go ahead and stack up the game. Take all the Charlotte overs, put them up top. Maybe not points for every single one, but spread out the production based on who it is, like PJ Washington, like the rebound props. Put the whole game stack together in that kind of a direction. So it's kind of an all or nothing, because you're shooting for that top where you are getting all your 10, 9, 8 point confidence slots together. So that's been a pretty viable strategy here of late. So fire that up.
All right. Donovan Mitchell over under 32.5 points. Greg.
Yeah. So first of all, that's a really, really lofty total. And just because of what I said before about, even though we do have these guys out now that I thought we were going to be playing early in the day, but Jordan Clarkson out, Joe Ingles out, that would seemingly help Mitchell. And it does to an extent, except the spread is so wide for this game, and just that we're seeing the Jazz already sit in these other guys, it just leads me to think that they're going to be relatively cautious with workloads, with this being the tail end of a back-to-back. So I side towards the under, just because I'm really concerned that Mitchell's going to be allowed to play a full workload.
Yeah, I think it's going to be probably the under as well. We just saw those get updated earlier in the day. That was just a gigantic number if you were going to have Ingles, O'Neal, Conley, everybody back in. But now with Ingles out, that's just kind of a big piece. Another piece that's not going to have any kind of an issue. He's not a huge usage guy by any means, but that's still some production that's going towards Mitchell. This is going to be like a lower confidence slot for me, but I think you're still shading on the under there, but nothing to take away from Donovan Mitchell. Back-to-back 42 real point games, been absolutely fire of late.
And last but not least, we've got Montrezl Harrell, 6.5 rebounds. Eric.
So just make sure that you're paying attention to the news. We've got our guy News God. He'll keep you updated throughout the day. We have things happening in MLB with all these different rain games that we've had of late. We've got NBA news that's kind of coming down the pipeline constantly. So El Negro Loco, make sure that you hit him up in the chat and let him know that you appreciate him, because he's doing a lot of work for us behind the scenes to keep everything updated. But pay attention to that news. We'll get that before lock with Drummond. If Drummond's going to be out, Montrezl Harrell, I'm going to have to side a little bit on the over, but as is, definitely an under if Drummond is in.
Yeah, so I agree the same as with Montrezl Harrell. If Drummond is out, then I think I'm going to like the overs for Montrezl Harrell, somebody who I'm going to be playing in DFS in that case also. But if we get Andre Drummond playing, Montrezl Harrell probably going to be marginalized. Just bringing up his minutes here really quick over the last couple of games with Drummond in the mix. The playing time has been down for Harrell, so it's hard to expect him to play really substantial minutes if Drummond's in there because the last 4 games, well, one of them was an ejection where he only played 2.5 minutes. Before that, 21 minutes, 23 minutes, only 15 minutes. Last game for Montrezl Harrell. So if Drummond is active, Harrell probably not a real significant part of the Lakers rotation. We could comfortably fade him, take the unders. Like you said, if Drummond's out, the overs for Harrell, and he's a lot more appealing.
All right. Greg, it just occurred to me who I think you look like. Have you ever
It's going to be great. I'm so ready.
After we've done a show together for like 2-3 months. Do you ever get that you look like Topher Grace?
Yes.
Okay.
But
right.
here's
I see that.
I had in a weird way though, so does Eric.
Oh, you're right. Oh,
Like,
weird.
what?
Yeah, so like Eric and I don't look alike, but Eric and I don't look alike, but we kind of have a common look-alike, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we
That
have like a
is
middle
bizarre.
bridge between our poles. Like it's
It's
that
like
middle
the
ground.
it's like the evolution poster.
Yes.
But I don't but it doesn't, it's just kind of binary, like it doesn't really lead anywhere. There's no escalation. It's just somewhere on the in between. But the other thing also, so I had a roommate in college who looked exactly like Topher Grace. So it's weird. It's just for some reason I'm only connected to people who look like him.
Interesting. You definitely, it's not Forgetting Sarah Marshall. What's the name of the one? Win a Date with Todd Hamilton. That's like the specific movie that you look like Topher Grace from.
I was thinking that 70s show.
Oh, that 70s show, big time, yeah, too. But he's got like the longer hair in that. So
True, yeah.
I was thinking more of like the curly hair, and he's got. I mean, looking like Topher Grace is not a bad thing because I guess I look like Topher Grace too. So there we go.
That is bizarre. You guys both have Topher Grace-esque qualities. Who knew? All right.
You did, apparently.
I did, yes.
Brought it up.
I knew. Yes, exactly. Eric reminds me of somebody. I can't figure out who. Maybe like
I'm now terrified. I was excited before. Now I'm terrified. I'm not.
I
really
don't know.
Sure where to go.
Do you have like a lot of homeless people around your building?
Wow. Really? Okay. That's
Just throwing it out.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. Tyler, best producer in the game, right there. So good.
Tyler off the top. Wow.
I hope Jordan's watching and heard that.
From the top rope. It's fine.
Okay, let's get back on track. Let's head over to good dog, bad dog.
Maybe not. Worst producer in the game.
He giveth and he taketh away.
You know, the best thing too is that he has a mic that randomly, like, sometimes he can't help himself and he has to like interject and talk. But most of the time, we can like push him right up to the brink and he can't do anything about it. And we get to just watch him like want to say something and he can't. It's a bummer. Sorry, Tyler.
He chimes in when it's super important and he needs to say it.
Or it's never super important. Let's be serious about that.
I thought his baseball rules were very important to note the other day. I don't know who was on that show, but it was good stuff.
But what baseball rules?
How it should work as hockey overtime, yes?
Oh,
Well, now I shouldn't ask questions I can't get the answer to on a show.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say not twice if yes. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, you said it on a show, I think on Friday with Spags and Ben, who is neither Eric nor Greg. So never mind. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Let's start with our good dog, Greg.
All right, so let's go with a good dog for today. How about the Minnesota Timberwolves? The game starts in 19 minutes, but the Timberwolves, who are 7.5-point underdogs at home. I know they have no Karl Anthony Towns today, but it's kind of a weird situation, right? They're playing an afternoon game, which to my knowledge, I didn't know they were playing until this morning. I assume the players didn't really know until they were playing this morning. The Timberwolves are still home. The Nets are without Kyrie Irving. He's also resting. Kevin Durant is playing, but I don't know how many minutes we could really expect him to play because he's been restricted lately. So I certainly favor the Nets to win, but 7.5 points is a pretty wide spread when both teams have guys out. The game's at a weird start time. There's just a lot of unknowns about this game. So As a home underdog, it's pretty significant. Timberwolves plus 7.5.
Not only that, but the Nets tomorrow have to go into. I see. This is where I might be curious about this, and I don't want to overthink it, but I was thinking about betting this game, and I ended up not, because they play a back-to-back tomorrow against Philly, and my guess is because Philly has a day of rest here, they'll allow Joel Embiid to go, and it might be a game that they just flat out punt, unless Kyrie Irving is going to play tomorrow, in which case that game becomes much more competitive against Philly. Wouldn't they basically, if they're going to extend Kevin Durant, extend him on the front end against the Timberwolves in a much more winnable game, and let him play more minutes today and then rest him tomorrow? What do you think about that? Because now the way the schedule works, they were going to have today be an off day. They're playing in this afternoon. Tomorrow they go to Philly on the road and play Philly in Philly. And then they have another game Friday, I believe is what I saw as well. But I was trying to figure out what to do betting wise for them. And then the Timberwolves just with this afternoon game kind of thrown into the mix. But Wednesday, it's a 7 p.m. game. So 4 o'clock out here on the West Coast. Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern time game. So I think Kevin Durant probably gets a little extra run. So I was thinking about making Minnesota my bad dog for that reason specifically. So I just wanted to ask you about that.
I don't. And because I don't think this is about playing for today or playing for tomorrow. I think this is long picture for the Nets, where Kevin Durant just missed, let's see, how much time? So Kevin Durant missed from February 13th to April 7th. In the 2 games since coming back, he played 19 minutes and then 24 minutes. So yes, I think his minutes are going to go up from 24, but I don't think we all of a sudden see Kevin Durant play 32 to 34 minutes. I still think we're more likely to see him somewhere in the 25 to 26 minute range, because ultimately, I don't think the Nets care that much about this game. I don't think they even care that much about tomorrow's game. I understand it's pretty impactful and important for seeding, but long term, the Nets are trying to win a title in the big picture. And I think that part of that is going to be Kevin Durant healthy. Part of it's going to be Kyrie Irving healthy, having James Harden healthy. So I don't think they want to push him to play, more minutes than he might be comfortable playing after such a long layoff. So I think he plays more than he played last game, but I would be really surprised if it's just a full minutes allotment for Kevin Durant.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'm going to do my good dog, though. This is just for Kayla. OKC, 16.5. It's a lot of points with a lot of bodies out for the Jazz, and they're on a back-to-back. I kind of feel like OKC can keep this a little bit closer than that. I don't need them to keep it close whatsoever. They just need to lose by 15. That's fine by me. So if you can get that done for me, Kayla, make a call.
I'll do my best. I'll see what I can do. I'll give Sam a call over there.
Appreciate it. Sam Presti, look at you. Knowing GMs and stuff. Sam
Presti is in the top 5 people I want to meet in real life.
Really?
I love Sam Presti. Yes.
He's a genius, actually. I mean, they have 48 draft picks coming up the next 3 years. That's right. Fun.
I wish we would start winning games, but
that's important too.
All right, Eric, tell us more about your bad dog.
So my bad dog was going to be, and I think it still probably will be, the Minnesota Timberwolves. No Karl Anthony Towns. Anthony Edwards is going to profile well. I mean, if this were on the main slate, that would be a fun question to be posing, is how much Anthony Edwards to be playing on this slate, where we don't have any guys over 10K to be going to, but no Cat, no Kyrie in this game, but Kevin Durant. And so my guess, based on the last couple of minutes, he didn't end up getting extended last time out, but they got completely blitzed by the Lakers. He came in the fourth quarter for like a random rotation when they were still down big anyway. But I'm assuming that means that he's got about 28 minutes in him. And I think 28 minutes of Kevin Durant up against this B team that is the Minnesota Timberwolves without Cat, this B team with Cat in the lineup as well. I think that they can go out and win this game. I think they really kind of try to go out and put their foot down here against Minnesota, and then possibly rest everybody against Philly. Might be an interesting thing to look at for tomorrow, but it'll be a short turnaround for them tomorrow now. I really think going on the road to Philly isn't something that they're going to be too concerned about. And if Kyrie gets back, then everything changes in that direction as well. But I think they play Kevin Durant today, extend him and for that full 28 minutes, and then rest him tomorrow.
Let's see. So many of these games are so close. So we have I've already said I like the Timberwolves as underdogs. Then we've got, I can't feel confident on a game that is a 16.5 point spread, but then every other game is expected to be played within one possession. So I'm just going to go with an injury note here. The Atlanta Hawks playing in Toronto against the Raptors. The Raptors still have Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet out, but Pascal Siakam's playing, OG Anunoby's playing. And for Atlanta, Trae Young is questionable. So if Trae Young gets ruled out, I have a feeling that line probably moves to the point where the Raptors would be favored at the time of tip-off. So most likely we're going to get an update on Trae Young at the 5:30 p.m. Eastern time injury report. And if he's ruled out, then Toronto is worth betting on.
All right. Eric, I know you don't have the chat up, but you've gotten that you look like Robin Williams and Joaquin Phoenix.
I get Joaquin Phoenix quite a bit, which is kind of an interesting one. I get
All
that.
right.
I get Jake Gyllenhaal randomly. I get who's the other guy that I get? Tobey Maguire is somebody I got.
Okay, I see. I can see all those
kind of
people.
like a blend of all three of them in some weird metaphorical way. So there's that. But I have like I don't know. Joaquin Phoenix I've been getting forever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say you look like, I don't want this to go to your head, but I can see you being like one of the like Prince Charmings at Disneyland.
Man, just absolutely a
like,
mark for it.
But like the one from Shrek?
You know, like dressed up in the suit, walking around, taking pictures with people.
Totally. Yep.
Totally.
I can see it too.
It's the bubbly disposition.
It's the white teeth. Yeah, it's the slick hair, you know.
Thank you very much. I'm happy
It's
to be
a
Prince Charming.
compliment.
These are good things. Yes, these are very, very good things. No, I'm not denying that whatsoever. There's a lot to say about that. That's for sure. I like. Oh, go
Mel
ahead.
could be your Cinderella. You guys, I'm just giving you Halloween ideas, actually.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Yeah, we'll hopefully be able to go out for Halloween this year. LA just complete shutdown. It's like that's the interesting thing about moving out to LA too, is like birthdays are gigantic deals out here. Whereas in like the Midwest, it's like, whatever, I just turned 32. Like, I don't really care. And then the other thing is the Halloween is like the biggest event of the entire year. You go to like West Hollywood or Hollywood in general, and everybody is unbelievable in terms of like the amount of effort they into the time and effort they put into their costumes. And you know, it's in college you just basically like put on like one of those robes or whatever from Animal House and you're ready to go. But nowadays you got to put in way more effort living in LA.
You're saying this, but yet I have done nothing for Halloween since I've lived out here, or really my birthday.
What? Okay, well, you're from the Midwest, so there's that. Yeah, you and I are one and the same there.
I think I've actually had to work, so maybe that's why.
Well, that's brutal. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure Melanie gets you out of the house this year.
Yes, throw a Halloween party for all of us to go to. That'd be fun.
Honestly, that's not the worst idea. We got Leslie out here. We got Spags out here. Good times.
Whole
Greg,
West
you're going to
Coast
have to fly out for LA for LA Halloween. How does that sound? We can be Topher Grace and Topher Grace.
No, I'd rather stay home and distance myself from everybody. I really like being a hermit and just staying here. I play some DFS. I come on, I talk about some stuff on the channel. People get mad in the YouTube chat. Like, I like this. This is my safe space.
You're thriving in pandemic life.
I was just going to say Greg thrives in this situation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, to an extent, like, I like having the option to be able to go out and go places, but I don't actually want to do it. You know what I mean? So like I
want to be invited to the party.
Yeah, no, but what I'm really looking forward to as soon as this ends is to make plans, then cancel them at last minute. So like, I'm not actually going to be doing anything like ultimately different, but like, I'll kind of feel like I'm needed by people, but ultimately not show up. And I feel like that's a good thing for me.
I like this journey for you. Yeah.
You're one of those, I wish I could, but I just don't want to people.
No, I don't want to, like, I don't even know what it is, but I really enjoy just making plans and then canceling them.
I have a problem with flakes. I don't like it when people say they're going to do something and then they flake. I get that stuff comes up.
That's what Greg
and you
is
have to
literally
cancel
saying
plans.
he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're my pet
literally
peeve.
what he's doing.
Yeah. I just want to inconvenience people.
I don't like making my plans and then getting them disrupted. If they're not set in stone, then we're good. But if we make definite plans to meet somewhere at a certain time and you flake, that annoys me.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
All right.
Oh, man. We can round this out. Yeah.
Let's get to our make or break. Which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Greg?
Boy, I mean, it's so hard to know what my actual exposure is going to look like just because it's so far in advance of the slate. But I'm going to say it's most likely the Utah Jazz because in theory, a lot of these guys are good values, but it's really hard for me to expect these guys are going to play full minutes allotments of like 36 to 38 minutes in a game where they're 17.5-point favorites, 16.5 now, actually it's moved. But even so, that's such a wide spread that for me personally, it's hard to expect that we're going to see just massive roles for the starters. I think they should win this game pretty comfortably, but if the Thunder are able to hang in and keep the game competitive, then I think we are going to potentially see really big games from Donovan Mitchell, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mike Conley. But these are guys who I'm likely not going to have a massive amount of exposure to.
Yeah, and for me, I'll go to the MLB streets again. I think we talked about Oakland yesterday. They ended up coming to fruition, which was kind of a bummer. I tend to be a guy who tries to go lighter on whoever the super popular stack is going to be on a larger MLB slate. They were all about where I expected them to be, 15, 20% on. The top stacks tool is free again today over here at Awesemo, so take a look at that. A lot of goodies for that. Alex does an incredible job. It's probably the thing that I use the most when it comes to building baseball lineups. And if you sort it right now by top leverage, the New York Yankees, they have power up and down that lineup. Up and down that lineup. Even like their backup catcher is out there hitting double dongs. So I really like targeting them. I know Jameson Taillon, that was funny for you. You haven't heard double dongs yet. That's an actual thing in baseball that people say.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know. I know you're like, he said double dong, but I'm pretty sure that the New York Yankees, any opportunity that I get where they're going to be around 3-4% this year, I got to go overweight to the field. I think Alex having his numbers fall in line with that makes this an important stack that I'm going to have well over the field of today. As I'm on NBA Live Before Lock again, making MLB lineups.
All right. That's all. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, Eric, really quickly, before we get to fade of the day, I have a bone to pick with you. What are you talking about? No big parties in the Midwest. My best birthdays were in the Midwest. First of all, I had a lot of friends.
No, I never said
parties
big parties.
Are great in the Midwest.
I didn't say that. I just said, no, birthday parties are a big deal here. And we didn't have big birthday parties in the Midwest.
Eric's been
Halloween was
Eric's been showing up to 8-year-old kids' birthday parties for years now. They're the best. He loves the cupcakes, the pizza. He blows out the candles. Honestly,
though, I am an exuberant individual. I like kids. They're nice, but yeah, I'm not showing up at random kids' birthdays. Just I'm looking forward to the day when I'm able to just go hang out and play sports against my kids. That'll be fun. That'll be I'm going to thrive in that environment because I have that youthful energy for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Last but not least, our fade of the day. Is there one game player or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public? Eric.
So I'm nervous because last night I was coming into today thinking I was going to play a lot of OKC, looking at Tony Bradley, Moses Brown, and with Alexei Pokusevsky and Isaiah Roby out for OKC, I thought that I would be going more towards these centers than what I am in Brown and Bradley. They're starting. Bradley's getting a lot of ownership. He's 4K over on DK. We've got him for over 20%. I'm going to be light on that now. I think that there's other directions that I'm going to go for my value. I think with Malachi Flynn and some of this Toronto Raptors news, I think we might have a couple guys on the Utah Jazz to prioritize. So that whole front court for OKC is kind of getting left behind for me.
I'm going to go with the baseball one here. The Atlanta Braves is a stack. They look like one of the more over-owned teams according to our top stacks tool, which is free today on Awesemo.com. But the Atlanta Braves, who are projecting for 4.4% chance to be the top overall scoring team on the baseball slate today, but 7.1% ownership. This is also a slate where I've really liked to try to pay up for my pitching. And the Braves are really expensive, so I don't think they're going to fit into the lineup builds I like. They're also a lot higher owned than I'd like to see. So Atlanta Braves, that's a team that I'm not going to really be on.
All right. Look at that. Right on time. Well done, you two.
Stick the landing.
This was a fun show today. Yes. Stick the dismount. Thank you to Eric and Greg. Thank you all, of course, for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. MLB Live Before Lock will be coming your way next. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern with Eric and Spags, I believe. Yes?
Yes.
Don't miss it. I'm Kayla Knierim. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
afternoon, Awesemo baseball fans. How's everybody doing out there? Hope your luck's been good lately. Hope you're enjoying a nice day. It's a great day here in Jersey. Great day to talk baseball. Here with Max Smotritskiy and Alex Awesemo Baker himself, the boss man. Guys, how you doing?
Can't complain.
Right on. Excellent. Alex, how's the day going for you?
Not too bad. I spent a lot of the morning trying to figure out how to improve some of the golf stuff on the site. So the Masters was a nice little test of some of the different stuff, but had a lot of fun betting the matchups. I threw some bets down this morning, and then the lines changed afterwards. So I'm like, maybe I'm onto something.
Nice.
Yeah, always nice when you can get them in ahead of that line movement. So that's great. Excellent. And hey, that's a nice little transition into being able to plug Odd Shopper, which you think you guys out there know about, but we talk about it all the time on the shows. Shopping around for odds, being able to capture things like that. A line has moved at some books, but not at others. That's a great way to use oddshopper.awesemo.com. So we'll throw that in for a quick early plug. We've also got all of our stuff goes up on the podcast networks, you guys. So if you miss the shows, everything except for the Live Before Locks goes up onto your favorite podcast network. So you can always find all the content. So almost all of your favorite Awesemo shows, everything through YouTube, goes up onto our podcast network. We've got a podcast for every sport at this point. Alex was just talking PGA. We're covering that. We cover everything. If there's a slate for it, we're covering it. So we were available on every major platform. Head over to awesemo.com/podcast and check out the latest podcasts that have gone up. And if you leave a 5-star rating and a review on our podcasts, leave your Twitter handle or your email address. Give us a way to get in touch with you. It doesn't have to be your main email address, but something you check every now and then so that we can reach you. You'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We're going to raffle one of those off every Friday, but it's only eligible for people who give us nice reviews. So hit us up with a 5-star review on your favorite platform there. I think you'll like it. I think you'll want to anyway. Every Awesemo show goes up on every major podcast network. Guys, hit the like and subscribe down the bottom there. We got free top stacks on the site today. So if you're not a subscriber yet, you can check out the top stacks tool. One of my favorite things on the site. Alex, you built that, and I go to it every morning. It's part of my process. It's one of the main parts of my process. It just gives a great feel for the slate. And just going, in taking a quick look at that, is there anything that really leaps to mind from the top stacks before we kind of get into the slate, or anything with like the lineups, the confirmed lineups that we had released? Anything change on the top stacks board based on the confirmed lineups that we had released, or based on like any weather concerns? Kind of a slate overview.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great way to get a look at the slate. What we've been seeing at the start of the year has been, aside from a few Coors games, there haven't been too many games that really have a ton of production projected. So the highest team totals we've been seeing around 5 to 5.5, and there are a lot of teams clumped up in that area. So I expect it could be pretty wide open what the best stacks are to target today.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that I love seeing that on the board, where it's a day where there's just a lot of teams grouped together. A lot of times we have a couple teams spike to the top, and then there's a couple teams, but they're grouped together with really, really low probabilities. Today, we've got a nice mid-range of teams to choose from, and it looks like ownership is interestingly distributed. Max, when you looked at some of the tools on the site, your projections and everything, what popped for you just in an overview kind of sense looking at today?
Yeah, it's tough. We were saying before the show, it's wealth of pitching, and all the stacks kind of look like they could all go off, but it's hard to figure out which one is the main one. So on days like this, using our top stacks tool, I just look at leverage, and I play the stacks that have the best leverage.
Yeah, that's an excellent approach to it, and that's something I look at as well. That's what landed me. I wrote up the Royals in my column this afternoon. You guys can check that out. It's in front of the paywall. They stood out to me a little bit as being one of those mid-range teams, a little bit frisky against a pitcher who I do believe in Dylan Bundy, but I thought they stood out just based on there was a little bit of leverage on them, and I'll take a little bit of leverage on this kind of a slate. So that's exactly how to use that tool. And again, guys, top stacks free at the site today, but get in there, hit us with a subscription. It's pretty affordable, and we've got the best content in the industry for baseball, for basketball, for the rest of the season, hockey the rest of the way in the playoffs, PGA, everything you can imagine. Guys, anything on the board? I didn't really get a chance to dig too deep into the weather, but I didn't see anything overly concerning. Anything on the board for you guys in terms of weather? I don't think there's any rain, but anything popping in terms of like wind outliers or anything like that we ought to call out?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any postponement risks today, which yesterday definitely was a huge issue with that Baltimore game getting postponed. Today it looks like we got pretty good weather as far as ones to target for bats. I think we always got to look at this Blue Jays team when they're playing at home, because the spring training park they're playing in for the time being has probably the best conditions outside of Coors.
Yeah, that's a park that pops to me, and we'll get into that one right now. That's our first game up on the board, so we might as well just dive in. We've got Jameson Taillon making his second start for the Yankees, taking on Hyunjin Ryu in his second start of the year. Pretty good matchup on the pitching side of things, but you mentioned the park, and that is a major interesting point for this game. You get two major league teams with some pretty good slugging power in what is essentially a minor league park. 365, I think, to the right field power alley I looked the other day. Max, what do you make of this game? Is this a spot for you for pitchers? What do you like? Are you betting on the offense or the pitching on this one? We can tackle these that way.
Yeah, I mean, definitely offense. The park, plus the fact that both teams have immense power, lineups that are 1 through 9, have guys that can hit home runs. I'm actually kind of bummed that the Yankees lineup isn't out yet. Yeah, it would be a lot easier to discuss it if we could see who's in it. Like yesterday, they kind of had a weaker version of their lineup out without Aaron Hicks, without Gary Sanchez. Of course, Higashioka hits 2 home runs. Kind of throws that out the window. I actually played Robbie Ray as a leverage play. Worked out for like 4.5 innings, and then he got 2 home runs against him. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Yankees have the best leverage score on our top stacks tool, so that's my favorite offense today. Ryu is obviously a competent pitcher. He faced him in his first start at a 13% swinging strike rate, but he does give up hard contact versus righties. Like you said, doesn't take much to get the ball out of this ballpark, and Yankees do not lack for power.
Yeah, and especially on the right side of the plate, we know that for sure. Second in the league over the last 2 years, 104 home runs, not counting this year's first in ISO, 223 ISO over the last 2 seasons as a team for the active roster. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good spot there. Alex, do you see in this one any differently? Are there specific bats you want to zero in on, or are you maybe looking at the pitchers in this one?
I think the pitchers do counteract the fact that it is such a favorable spot for bats to some extent. I mean, one guy that I'm kind of intrigued by, just as a big question mark, is Jameson Taillon, because he didn't play last year. So that really leaves us with not much to go off of. In his first start this year, he went 74 pitches and he got 7 strikeouts, which was 7 out of 17. So pretty crazy performance there. I mean, it could be an outlier for sure, but he could be back with some improved stuff too. So that does make Toronto seem a little bit more risky. But then again, I could just go the other way, where like maybe it just was a little bit of fluke, and he's not going to be as good as he was a couple of years ago. How are you guys feeling about Taillon?
As a Yankee fan, I'm excited to see him on the team. I thought it was a great acquisition, and I'm hoping that he becomes the pitcher that we think he is, or was at least. 2 Tommy Johns is very concerning. We don't have to deal with 2 Tommy Johns on this slate, but we do have a 9,400 price tag on him on DK.
Yeah,
are you
crazy.
willing to pay that much on DK for him?
I'm not playing him, but I'm just saying for the prospects of the Blue Jays, because it is such a good park. They got a pretty good lineup. So hey, the fact that Taillon is pitching against them is a negative, I think. And then on the other side, Hyunjin Ryu is certainly a solid pitcher. He had a 3x whip last year, so very good. So that's why the Yankees may go on their own today, is if they can get past Ryu, then they're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, and a fair amount of strikeouts in both lineups. So it's not like these pitchers don't stand a chance of putting up decent scores. And there could be a little bit of sneaky leverage here. I just hate the price on Taillon going up against this pretty decent Blue Jays lineup on DraftKings. He makes a little bit more sense, but I don't think you need to go there on the FanDuel side of things. Favorite bat from this one, Alex, on either side?
I think Lourdes Gurriel is looking mighty cheap at 3,300 on DraftKings and 2,200 on FanDuel. It's a guy that he had pretty good power last year. He's been really struggling to get the season started. with only 20% on base and 0 extra base hits. But I mean, he's been at bat 30 times, so I'm not really going to read into that too much.
And that's something we should probably touch on that real quick, because we all have been referring to, I do it constantly, referring to past 2 years' stats. I haven't started talking about this year's stats at all. At what point in the season do you really start considering that, or does it even come into your model in terms of how you run the projections and stuff?
It's definitely factored in a little bit more heavily than the previous year, as far as like on an individual at-bat basis. But because there's so few at-bats this year compared to last year, like it hasn't made a huge impact on the projections yet.
Yeah. Max, I'm sure you agree. That's something that, baseball takes time. And I was laughing the other day watching the Yankees broadcast. Michael Kay was talking about how DJ LeMahieu was really struggling with runners on because he was 2 for 9 and had hit into 2 double plays. You have to give baseball time. So I think you would agree with that, Max. How much of weight do you put in, or how long do you wait until you start considering this year's stats and a streak like, somebody going like 0 for 15 to start the season or something? Does that impact how you think of a player?
No, I really don't care about the batting stats at all, really. I do care about like the pitch data, right? Because pitch data will stabilize first, just because obviously you throw more pitches. So there's more events for you to look at. So I do look at like velocity early in the season, seeing if guys are throwing different pitch mixes than they did last year. I do look at that, and then I look at like swinging strike rate, stuff like that for pitchers.
It is significantly different on the pitching side of things. I think we can probably all agree on that, just in terms of what the guys are throwing, how they're throwing, how hard they're throwing it, and then it becomes a lot more randomized on the hitting side with the bat and the ball actually making contact. So, all right, I think we covered this one. Max, did you have a favorite bat on the Yankees since Alex called out a Blue Jay before we move on?
I mean, all the righties from the Yankees look good, but like, especially Gary Sanchez for me, I guess, because catcher position's weak. Usually we used to seeing him in like the 5Ks, only 4.7K. If he's actually in the lineup, maybe they'll give Higashioka another start. He's super cheap just because he had 2 home runs yesterday. But either one for me would be a good spot to target.
I like that. And yeah, I'm not sure I would go to Rougned Odor, the newcomer in that lineup, lefty, but
killed me yesterday.
He's in and out there. He's been good. I badmouthed him coming over, and of course he's immediately produced. Looks like a totally different guy too. Got a haircut, got his beard trimmed. Moving on.
Not punching anybody out, so that's nice.
Yeah, so far. Fingers crossed. Moving on, next game, we've got the Texas Rangers taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. We got Kyle Gibson on the hill for the Rangers. Ryan Yarborough, you can call him Yarbs, going for the Rays. We've got a decent little total, the 7.5 run total in this one, with the Rays favored pretty heavily. What are you seeing in this one? Either one of the pitchers appeal to you guys at all? Max, why don't you start us off? Either one of the pitchers in this one appeal to you?
It's so hard, right? Because I'm not interested in Yarborough, first of all. 7.4K, doesn't really have any upside. I think he's thrown like 86. He's basically your crafty lefty these days. Kyle Gibson got blown up absolutely in his first start. Then his second start, everybody stacks against him with Minnesota, and he basically shuts them down. It's just like he's a Jekyll and Hyde, right? Like he has tons of swing and miss stuff. His swinging strike average so far this year in the 2 games is 17%, which is elite. But he also gives up a ton of hard contact. So, I mean, I think he's a good pitcher to target in GPPs for upside, to pair with like a Bauer or one of the higher price guys. And also you can stack against them as well.
Alex, does that $5,600 price tag on Gibson and $7,100 on Fanduel have an appeal for you going up against a Rays lineup with a fair amount of strikeouts in it?
Yeah, I think Gibson's looking pretty interesting because of that $5,600 price tag. It looks like the ownership won't be particularly high either. I mean, he's been an average strikeout guy in previous years, but the fact that he's been able to get pretty good strikeout percentage this year at 28% is encouraging. So I think he's a little bit underpriced, especially given who the Rays are going to be rolling out.
Yeah, that Rays lineup the last 2 years, 26th in baseball against right-handed pitching, 24.6% strikeout rate, 28th in ISO with a 1.54. So not a ton there. There's a little bit of pop, but tons and tons of strikeouts. Are we liking anything from the bats on either side of this one? Is anybody willing to go to this Texas team who I'm not going to even give an opinion on, because every time I've done it so far this year, I've been wrong. So I'm going to sit out to the Texas bats here. What are you guys doing with, are you stacking Texas? I know you're not going to Yarbs, but are we stacking Texas against them? Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely stack Texas. Like 3.3 runs just feels really low for them. I'm not sure why Vegas is overvaluing Yarbs, as we call him, so much, just because he's not very good. I mean, obviously not a lot of power here, not a lot of good bats, but they can make contact. Ray Stadium, not great for home runs. I don't know. I mean, you want to get to 10K pitchers in there and you don't feel like playing like a Detroit stack, which is super high variance, you can play Texas.
Alex, are you going to the Rangers stack? Are you stacking any Rays coming back the other way against Kyle Gibson? What are you thinking on bats in this one?
I think the Rays stack is somewhat interesting. The park at Tropicana is a big negative, being indoors. So the pricing on the Rays doesn't look very appealing, which is what makes them kind of a pay up to be contrarian spot. They are showing about half the ownership of their chance of being the top stack in our top stacks tool. So it doesn't make a lot of sense like from the park, but they do have good power and the ownership's low.
Yeah, I was just looking at them in the top stacks tool, and I think they rank out interestingly on DraftKings for sure. That 3.8 value score that you have in there, and that's another important column that we probably don't talk about enough. But that 3.8 value score in there is definitely pretty low on a team like that. So pay up to be contrarian with them a little bit, but they are interesting on FanDuel, where they do have a 6.8 value top value percentage, and they are negative 3.9 in the leverage column. So people getting to them a pretty good amount on the FanDuel side of things. I think it's a spot that I can get to. I was hoping it would be more contrarian than that to roster some bats against Gibson here, but I guess he's just overall not going to be popular enough. But I do like some of the lefty bats in that lineup, the Austin Meadows, the Brandon Loweys of the world. So I can throw some Rays at him. I think that's covered it on this one. Probably move on to the Miami-Atlanta game. We've got Pablo Lopez going from Miami, taking on Max Fried, which is a pretty good pitching matchup. Lopez has been interesting. The last couple of years, he's been pretty good at generating ground balls, keeping the ball in the yard. So for a Braves team that is excellent against right-handed pitching usually, and usually has pretty standout home run marks against right-handed pitching, despite having a number of right-handed hitters, I'm getting some suppressed power metrics for the Braves, and they've come down a little bit on the board for me. Alex, how are you seeing the Braves offense today going up against a pretty good pitcher in Pablo Lopez?
Well, the over-under in this game is only 7.5, which is a little bit discouraging. So I think the Braves, they do have a really good lineup, a ton of power, but I'm guessing the matchup is a factor with Pablo Lopez being solid. He had a 3.1 xFIP in 52 innings last year. Has been really good to start the year this year. It's not the scariest, so I think we can take some shots here, given the Braves do have a lot of extra base upside. But I can see why they're a little bit low on today.
Now, on the DK slate, it looks like they are drawing a little bit of ownership. They're drawing a 9.6 ownership share, getting a little bit negatively leveraged. Is that a stack you're willing to go to in that situation with some ownership on them, even against maybe a tough pitcher here, Max? Is that something that you're going to maybe attack some of that, or are you more on the pitching side for this game?
I'm on neither, actually, which is funny to say. I just don't make enough lineups for me to be interested in a Brave stack against Lopez, who's like Alex said, low xFIP. He's not really a strikeout guy, but generates a lot of weak contact, a lot of ground balls. Just not something I look for when I target pitchers. And so not really there for me for offense. Max Fried, I guess, is interesting as far as targeting for a pitcher, though. We got an extra day of rest yesterday. I know he was supposed to go yesterday on 5 days, but they gave him an extra day. He only had a 6% swinging strike rate last start, which I guess scared them. But there were no velocity issues, really. So he looks like a good value to me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like Fried here. I like the price on him at 7,600 on FanDuel. 6,500 is a heck of a bargain for a pitcher
Yeah,
of
it
his
feels
quality on
cheap.
DK. That's actually pretty ridiculous. So you can do a lot of special things with that on DK. And there's a lot of those pitching spots today that we're going to have to get to. But yeah, I like Fried a lot here. Had a very strong year through the season last year, 1.09 whip, a 405 xFIP for the season, 22.3 strikeout rate. Not the biggest strikeout guy in the world, but he's good at limiting hard contact, doesn't give up a ton of home runs. We just saw Yusuke Noah carve this team up yesterday. So
Exactly.
there's much more upside for a guy like Max Fried here. Alex, are you willing to go to any of the Marlins bats coming back the other way against Max? They've got a few good right-handed hitters in that lineup. The projected lineup is all right-handed hitters. Are you looking to go to any of those guys, maybe a little bit contrarian coming against Max Fried here?
I'm probably more interested in going to Fried because of the strikeout potential here and the price. But Miami, they've upgraded their lineup a little bit this year, where it looks like about league average, where previous years they've been pretty bad. So I don't mind taking a stab, but the fact that they have a team total of under 4 is pretty discouraging.
Yeah, and we've got just a number of low run totals on the board today. So weaving between some of those is just going to be very tricky as a part of this slate. So I think we've covered this one pretty much. For me, entire game, both sides, I think if I had to take a favorite bet, I might have to go with, let's say, Mr. Dansby Swanson, the shortstop from the Braves. I always like going to Dansby. It is, like I said, a limited power spot for me for the Braves, but 2,400 is pretty darn cheap for a quality shortstop like Dansby Swanson. If you're building stacks, I think he makes a ton of sense. 4,200 on DK, more reasonable price, but that's my favorite bet from this game. What about you guys? Max, you have a favorite bet on either side of this one?
Yeah, I guess I would probably go. I don't know. I'm not even sure. Like the Braves are all priced up. Yeah, I guess Swanson 4.2K was a shortstop spot. I get that. I guess if I was going with anybody, I would go with some of the Marlins guys just because they're so cheap and they do have power. I mean, Aguilar hits lefties well, Duvall hits lefties well, Anderson, Cooper, those guys.
Alex, what about you? Anything as far as your favorite bat or bats?
I'd probably be looking at the Marlins as well. Garrett Cooper and Adam Duvall both have some good power, and the price is right. So don't mind taking a stab there.
Love it. Let's move on. We've got a pretty good pitching matchup in the next one as well. It's just going to be good pitching matchups up and down. I'm sorry to repeat myself, guys, but it is another good spot. Kyle Hendricks going for the Cubbies, taking on Brandon Woodruff for the Brewers. We have a total of 7.5 on the board on this one. Cubbies 3.53 implied total. The Brewers with a 4.05. We betting on the pitching side or the hitters on this one? Max, what do you think?
I mean, I love Woodruff, but he's going to be like mega chalk, I'm assuming, at 7.5K, seeing after what Peralta did to the Cubbies yesterday. I mean, his stuff is so good. I don't understand. Like, DK hates him. Why aren't they pricing him up like to at least the 8Ks? Yeah, I don't know. Woodruff is definitely the chalky play here. I'm not interested in any of the Cubbies, really. Hendricks isn't what he once was. He used to just limit the hitter's upside on the other side, but now he's like averaging 86 on the fastball. I just don't think he's really that good anymore. The problem, of course, is that Yelich was out yesterday, and he would be like the guy I would use as a mainstay in the Brewers stack. So if he's back in, I would play Brewers stack, no problem.
Alex, what about you? Does that Christian Yelich, if Yelich is out, does that take the Brewers more off the board for you? Does it lead you toward Kyle Hendricks at all? Or are you kind of crossing off Kyle Hendricks, hoping that Yelich plays and hoping you can stack the Brewers against him?
The Brewers lineup does look pretty weak without Yelich in it. So that could be a good matchup for Hendricks if Yelich is out. Hendricks has had a good start to the year with a 25% K rate, which is up significantly from last year, but it's only been 2 games. So he's never been a great strikeout pitcher, and I'm pretty happy just going to other guys and hoping to cash in on a little bit more strikeout upside.
Yeah, for me, that's a spot. There's a lot of strikeouts in that Brewers lineup in the right spot, but I don't think that Hendricks is the right guy to exploit that. At 8,100, I think there's just better options on FanDuel than him. And I think the same applies on DK, 7,700. if we're looking at some of the bats in this one, the Brewers lineup might be a little weak. They do throw a good amount of lefties, particularly obviously if Yelich is in there. And they're not that expensive on the board. Cubby's also not that expensive, particularly on the Fanduel side of things. You go to Ian Happ, Wilson Contreras off the top, both under 3,000. Anthony Rizzo for 3,000. Chris Bryant, Javi Baez the most expensive at 39. Chris Bryant at 36. There's a lot of affordability in that lineup. Does that do anything for you, Alex, on for the Cubby side of this one? You kind of staying away from Woodruff. I see the Cubs ranked down the board in the top stacks tool.
Yeah, I feel like today's not really a day where finding the money to get to some of the more expensive stacks will be a problem with guys like Woodruff who are really cheap. But that being said, the Cubs look like one of the weaker options on today's slate. Woodruff, he had a good year last year with the 3.5 xFIP, so that's definitely a negative for the bats. He's been even better to start the year this year. And then the over-under of this game looks pretty low at 7.5. The reason why is because it's only 50 degrees in Milwaukee, so it's really cold, not good batting temperatures.
Ooh, it's like a nice 75-degree day here in Jersey. Max, you seeing that one any different? You seeing anything from the Cubs side of things? Any of those big lefty bats going up against Woodruff here is maybe a little bit contrarian. They do look like they have a little bit of leverage on them on DK, but again, ranked way down the top stacks board, which is free today.
Yeah, not for me, not the Cubbies. If Yelich is in there, like I said, I don't mind stacking. The Brewers here, yeah, they had such a down year last year, most of these guys, but like Shaw still had a 199 ISO last year. Bolgebach, 191 ISO. Yelich had a 43% hard contact rate last year, but hit 50% ground balls. So hopefully change his swing up this year and can get the ball in the air more.
Yeah, change that launch angle a little bit and still managed to hit 12 home runs with a 225 ISO, create runs 12% better than the average. So it's outside of the 205 average, we get to 356 on base, 430 slugging percentage is down, but I think there's plenty to still expect from Christian Yelich. And yeah, that's more on the board for me as a spot if Yelich is in the lineup, obviously. For me on the Cubs side of things, if I wanted to take a bat, I would go to $2,400 Jock Peterson as a lefty one-off and hope that he hits a couple home runs. Moving on, last game of the early part of the night here. We've got Steven Strasburg for the Nats taking on Jack Flaherty for the Cardinals. Another really strong pitching matchup, guys. 7-run total in this one. Cards slight favorites, but not by a lot. 3.48 implied total for the Nats, 3.59 for the Cards. We going to pitchers here in this one? This feels like a pitcher spot to me. Not the strongest lineups on either side. Two pitchers I really like. Strasburg priced up at 10-4 on FanDuel, but only 84 on DK.
Yeah.
Flaherty, 82 on FanDuel, 81 on DK. What do you like, Max, on the pitching side of things on this one?
Yeah, Strasburg's interesting, right? Like, he's not the guy that we remember seeing with like a 97-mile-an-hour fastball. He's like throwing 93 now, but the breaking stuff is still so good, and he seems underpriced at 8.4K on DK for sure. I mean, I've been on the Cardinals all year, and it hasn't worked out. Like, I just stacked them in the wrong spots. Yesterday, they got dominated by like Betty. I don't even understand what happened. But yeah, Strasburg looks like a good option to me. And in our pitching tool, he does look like he's going to be a little bit under-owned at only 3% ownership. So it feels like a good contrarian play. Not really on Flaherty at 8.1. Kind of like his strikeout stuff has been down. Yeah, another guy that's just getting back in form, didn't pitch a ton last year. If I was playing anybody on Washington, I don't think I would want to stack, but Schwarber seems cheap, a lot of power there, and Soto's just tearing the cover off the ball. 5.6K is expensive, but a good contrarian pay-up option here.
Yeah, Soto, I don't know if it's quietly anymore, but maybe not getting quite enough credit as one of the best bats in baseball, hands down. That kid is amazing. Kyle Schwarber was my home run pick from the team today, so I would back you on that one if you want to grab a lefty from the Nats to throw up against Jack Flaherty. I agree the strikeouts are concerning, and his projection is down a little bit for me. Still a pitcher that I like. I believe in the upside, but there are limited strikeouts in that Nationals lineup. It's definitely something that they do well, limiting the Ks. Alex, are you seeing that one any differently? Are you willing to go to Jack Flaherty on either site?
I I think he's a decent option. His strikeout rate last year was 30%, which was pretty impressive. Somewhat limited sample, 35 innings. This year, a little bit more modest at 23%. So I think the truth is somewhere in between there. But the matchup is a little bit tougher versus the Nationals. They have one of the lower strikeout rates on the slate. So it is a little bit of a contrarian spot, but the Midwest weather is a little bit cool today. So in St. Louis, we got about 65 degrees at game time. So there should be some good pitching conditions in this one too.
Yeah, I like the spot for pitching. I'll have some Strasburg even at the high price on FanDuel. He ranks out as one of my better pitching options. I think I'm willing to throw some bats in minor shares from both sides at this one. I do like the top six. I don't think I want to include Matt Carpenter right now, but maybe at 2,200 on FanDuel, I guess I'll include Matt Carpenter as an option from the 7 spot Cards lineup, maybe in a few shares. They're not going to be very highly owned, so a little bit contrarian stack there, I think. But to add another number on the Flaherty side of things, just to expand the sample that you mentioned, Alex, 196 innings in 2019, also a 30% strikeout rate. So he's definitely proven it with the strikeouts. They're certainly there. It is a little bit concerning going up against the Nats and their ability to limit the strikeouts, though, like we talked about. Anything else? Anything jumping out for you on the Cardinals side of things? Is throwing them up against Strasburg here, Alex? Is it a spot you're willing to go as a stack, or maybe some one-offs in their bats?
I'm not super high on the Cardinals here. It does seem like they have some guys that may be falling off at this point, like Carpenter and also Goldschmidt, who his power just hasn't been the same in a while. Last year his ISO was only 160. This year he's really struggled. So I think I'm not really seeing any big reasons to go to the Cardinals today.
Makes sense. Yeah, major drop in power concerningly for Goldschmidt, and that's a big part of their lineup and what they do. I'm hoping that having Nolan Arenado hitting behind him gives them a little protection in the lineup, sees a few better pitches, all those narratives. But until we see it, it is definitely concerning. 3,500 on FanDuel for him, 51 on DK. That's a lot to pay for a hitter who's kind of struggling, not putting up a ton of power, hitting in front of $3,700, $5,200 Nolan Arenado on both sites. For me, that's maybe a 3-man Tommy Edman, Goldschmidt, and Arenado. If you wanted to work the ageless Yadi Molina into it, you could. Dylan Carlson and Paul DeJong, if you're building a bunch of them, then maybe work those guys in. But that brings us to about the halfway point, guys. So I mentioned it earlier in the show, but we've got a bit bigger of a conversation about it. Oddshopper.awesemo.com. One of the biggest edges in sports betting is always shopping the way to find the best lines. Betting lines change by the minute. They vary greatly depending on which book you're using. That's why it's important to use a site like oddshopper.awesemo.com. In fact, don't use a site like it. Use that site. It's the best way to find the best line at the best book for any bet that you're looking to make, whether it's on the game, whether it's on a player prop, anything that you're looking to bet gives you that edge to beat the house. Head on over to oddshopper.awesemo.com. It's where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, player and team futures. All of it gets updated in real time. It's a pretty slick little dashboard that we built, all the different sites laid out. As I said, it updates in real time so you can see anything that changes. And if something changes over here, it might not have changed at a different book quickly enough, and you can grab that bet. All laid out for you, oddshopper.awesemo.com. Guys, hit the like, subscribe to the feed below so you get all the notifications when we go live with all of our shows. We've got free top stacks on the site today. Get to the site, pick a subscription that meets your needs and budget. I promise you, it's going to help you raise your DFS game. So when you do that, jump into our premium Slack channels. It's part of your subscription. We're all hanging out in there. Alex is in there. Max is in there. I'm in there all the time. We answer questions. We've got a DFS 101 channel to help you get started, help you find your way through the site, how to use the different tools and projections. We've got all kinds of stuff going. If you win a contest with our logo in your as your avatar, if you're in the top 3 in a contest, any contest that has more than 5,000 people in it, let us know about it. Show it off on Twitter, social media, the Awesemo_com handle. Send it to us. It'll qualify you to get a free month of Platinum Plus. No Fantasy Cruncher included in that because everybody asks. Free month of our Platinum Plus subscription if you get into that qualifying. So you can turn those tournament wins into a little bit bigger of a prize. Guys, I think that's all the plugs. Let's jump into another game here before everybody gets bored and changes the channel. I think we've got next one up. One of my favorite gas cans to target in the entire league, Matthew Boyd going for the Detroit Tigers, taking on the Houston Astros with Jake Odorizzi on the hill. Not the best pitching matchup in the world. Maybe a spot we can throw some bats at finally. I'm trying to click to my tab here with the runs on it. Here we go. So it looks like we've got a 9-run total. That ties the Yankees game for the highest total on the board. Astros pretty big favorite in this one, getting a 5.24 implied total to the 3.86 that I've got for the Tigers. Is this one all about the Astros bats? I don't think I'm going to either pitcher. Max, is this all about the Astros bats?
Yeah, pitching is just too deep on the slate to go to either of these guys, right? Like Odorizzi only pitched 4 innings in the spring. Like, is he just the opener? You know, he's going to go 3, maybe 3, 4. That's it. And he wasn't very good. I mean, I know Astros are like well known for these reclamation projects that they take on and just turn them into lights out pitchers. I just don't see it for Odorizzi. On the other side, Boyd is the one that everybody stacked against with the Twins, and he kind of shut them down. It wasn't Gibson, as I mentioned. I think Gibson was actually against the Blue Jays. So yeah, I mean, let's hope Boyd isn't back to like the form that he showed in the beginning of, I think it was 2019, where he looked really, really good and then kind of fell off the face of the earth. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it depends on the ownership, right? Like the Astros should be the chalkiest, and the Detroit looks like our top owned value stack today, which is weird saying with Detroit. Like, is everybody really going to stack them because they're so cheap? Yeah, I don't know. The park is great because the righties aim at the Crawford boxes here, which is like 330, 340. It's basically like a version of Fenway. Yep. So yeah, I mean, the bats definitely look much better here, but it all depends on the ownership for me.
Alex, I see that on the board what Max was kind of just talking about. The Tigers rank out as, you know, not the top teams, but in that next tier of teams in terms of the probability of being the top stack on both sites. They've got a pretty decent value score and a little bit of leverage there. Is that a stack that you're going to tonight? It looks actually, on DraftKings, it looks like they're getting a tremendous value score and negative leverage. On Fanduel, they're getting positive leverage. I need to remember to check both sites.
No, I mean, that's always really interesting to see those discrepancies where on DraftKings, Tigers are like beyond chalky, where like for some reason, then we're projecting them to be the highest owned team on the slate. And I understand because Odorizzi is pretty bad. He had a 6 xFIP last year. And then, I mean, you have the park in Houston, which is a plus compared to a lot of these Midwest parks that have very cold temperatures today. So there are factors working in the Tigers' favor, but this is a very rough lineup where they only have 2 batters that really have decent power. Just not a ton of talent in this one. So it is a little scary seeing the high ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, since you can get them at lower ownership, I think they might be worth taking a stab on because of the conditions being a little bit better in this one.
Yeah, they're interestingly on DraftKings, $3,100 average salary for the confirmed lineups. So they're just super affordable. They help things work across the board. So we've got a few good pay down pitchers, one significantly inexpensive lineup that is very much in play for a lot of people. It's not a good lineup, to Alex's point. I think the 2 power hitters he was talking about were probably Nomar Mazara and Jonathan Scope. Jonathan Scope turned out to be my home run hit pick today. I don't really know how I came across about that. He ranks out really well in my model. Some of these Tigers are flashing some power in my home run model, taking on Jake Odorizzi. He's been a little bit rough in the home run department. Max, is this a spot where you're expecting some fireworks and some power from the Tigers, or is it more all about just the value play there?
So the one angle you can do with the Tigers is play the righty bats, because Odorizzi has always been fly ball and power to reverse splits, like to the righties. So you can play like, I think Wilson Ramos is like getting the cover up of all this year. I don't know, take it for what it's worth. But he's always had some power. And then Scope and Nunez are the guys from the Orioles that have a little bit of power. But Dew is like their good prospect. Can throw him in there as well. So yeah, I kind of like the 3-man righty stack here just to be a little bit different against Odorizzi. Also, like Odorizzi won't be in there long. And that's another thing you have to think about with the Tigers. The Astros have a good bullpen, so they can throw some arms out there at you to kind of like mitigate the upside of your stack after Odorizzi is done.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's definitely a good point and something we have to focus on, particularly early in the year. Some of these short leashes as guys get stretched out, and especially a guy like Odorizzi, who you mentioned threw 4 innings this spring. Alex, on the Astros side of things, before we move on, you have any favorite bats that you're looking to here against Matt Boyd? Is this a target spot for you? I'm getting some impressive home run marks on the Astros as well. Boyd's pretty bad at giving up home runs. He did have that 30% strikeout rate that Max mentioned 2 years ago. Last year, he was down to 22.1, 4.98 xFIP across the season with a 1.48 whip. So puts guys on base and gives up some power. Is this a spot for the Astros for you?
Yeah, last year was a rough year for Boyd. Going back 2 years ago, he was one of our favorites in fantasy. So this year to start the season, he's been, I think he's been okay. Not anything special. So I think that is encouraging enough for me for the Astros because they do have a lot of talent. The park factor is working in their favor relative to all the colder temperatures. So I think Houston, they make a ton of sense today. And the ownership seems to be somewhat reasonable on them. So it looks like Bregman is super, super high owned on DraftKings and Fanduel. But I don't see any reason why he's essential. I don't mind going to all the other guys that have more moderate ownership on the team.
Yeah, a lot of my favorite bats in the middle of that lineup, including Carlos Correa, Jordan Alvarez, a little bit underowned on the Fanduel slate. It looks similar on DK. They're getting a little bit more attention, but you could go. Kyle Tucker is a fantastic bat down that lineup. I could even get to Miles Straw with all his speed and his ability to get on base as a cheap wraparound option if I wanted to build some contrarian-looking stacks. So that's definitely a spot in consideration for me. Before we move on, Max, you have a favorite bat from the Astros or any important thoughts about that Astros lineup? And then I'm clicking over to the next game.
Yeah, I mean, the ISOs versus lefties for the Astros are really impressive. Gurriel, 293 last year. Obviously small sample, but 290 for Bregman. Even Alvarez had a 304 ISO. Only like 30 at bats, but still, like you can throw him in there in the stack.
Yep, and this one's in Houston, so if you believe they found a new way to cheat, then so much better for them. Got to throw that in every time as a Yankees fan. Guys, moving
yesterday.
On. We've got
versus mice.
We've got next one up, the Angels taking on the Kansas City Royals in KC. We've got Dylan Bundy going against Danny Duffy. Maybe another spot to throw some bats at. It was like I mentioned earlier in the show, I did write up the KC side of things. I see a little bit for them, at least the top part of the lineup there. We've got an 8.5 run total, so it's the third highest on the slate, right in line with that Tigers and the Yankees game. So we've got a 4.5 run total on the Angels, 401 on the Royals side. So the Angels are favored here. I was getting to more Royals than I was Angels. Might be the pricing. I'm getting similar projections on both sides of things. Alex, which side of this one do you like better for bats?
Definitely the Angels side. I think Danny Duffy, he had a little bit of an off year last year. So that's definitely not a scary matchup. And they got a lot of power in the lineup. I mean, mostly at the top of the order, but pretty solid. So definitely thinking the Angels are a solid play today.
I like it. Now, Shohei Ohtani looks like he's getting not that much ownership on the FanDuel slate at 3,800. I think maybe people are overreacting to a lefty. Is that something you're really concerned about with a hitter of Ohtani's quality, Max?
No, not really. And it's not like he doesn't hit lefties well. He has power against everybody. So, yeah, I'm not that concerned with Ohtani. Actually makes your stack a little bit more contrarian to throw a lefty in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can build him in, then, the obvious Mike Trout that nobody's really skipping over in this stack. But another player that I like with this team, and I like to work him in to be contrarian when he's under-owned, which on the DK slate, it looks like he's projecting to be under-owned, is their leadoff hitter, David Fletcher. Not a lot of power in his bat, but he's a good on-base guy, and he's getting on base in front of all these sluggers. And if we're talking about a lineup that's pretty limited to the top 5 bats when Anthony Rendon's not in there, I think he makes a hell of a lot of sense to build in here. You're talking about a guy last season, 319, 376, 425, triple slash in 230 plate appearances. Year before, 290, 350, 384, and 653. So he knows how to get on base. It's just a lack of power that keeps people away from him. Alex, is David Fletcher somebody that you include in your Angel stacks?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, pretty much anyone with a bat, I might be including in the stacks, but his batting position being the first in the lineup does really account for the fact that he's not a power hitter and he doesn't steal bases. They just have him in there to get on base and get knocked in. So that will definitely help your correlation.
Yep. And what about old man Albert Pujols, hitting 5th in the projected lineup today? Probably where he'll land. 2,400 on Fanduel, 3,400 on DK. Pretty affordable pricing for a future Hall of Famer, but a guy who's certainly not the hitter that he was. Is he going to be a part of your stack? He's going to have a bat in his hand, so I assume the answer is yes, Alex. But is he somebody you're willing to go to a much bigger degree than what the public's projecting for?
So I think this one's a little bit interesting because both Ohtani and Jared Walsh have that first base eligibility. So you are choosing a little bit between them, and they're also multi-position. So you could have Pujols, Ohtani, and Walsh all in the lineup together. But there's some interesting trade-offs there where maybe Pujols will be a little bit lower owned just because people will rather go to one of those other guys. So I guess he's okay. I mean, we know he's not the same hitter he used to be at this point, but the spot isn't bad compared to all the others on the slate.
Yeah, he was ranking out with a decent home run mark for me, so I made him my home run pick from the Angels in my column today just for old time's sake. But I think he's got a decent shot of giving us a nice score. Max, are you with me on the Royals bats being an interesting spot here, or are you more on the Dylan Bundy side of this one?
I love Bundy, but I love him because he strikes a lot of people out. He also gives up a ton of hard contact. He's actually throwing harder than he did last year, which is interesting to see for Bundy, because he was a hard-throwing guy, then had some surgeries, and the velocity kind of fell off, and he fell in love with the breaking ball. The breaking ball is what makes him so interesting for strikeouts, but it would be nice for him to gain a couple miles on the fastball just to throw people off of the breaking ball more. I think he has upside in the spot. The problem is that the Royals aren't the Royals that we've seen before, where they actually have some really nice bats, and they don't strike out as much as they used to. So I definitely see it from your perspective as well. But I do think he's an interesting GPP option because I don't think anybody goes to.
Yeah, for me, it was what appealed to me about the Royals is the top end of that lineup, the pricing, particularly on FanDuel, but also on DK, and the leverage that we're going to be able to squeeze out of it. I think there's a good amount of leverage there, and they're really affordable. And I just think they're a more talented lineup if I'm looking for a mid-range, low-price kind of lineup than that Tigers lineup we were talking about before. So I think that's, so that's a spot for me where I'm going to make my scene around, Whit Merrifield, Andrew Benintendi, Sal Perez, Carlos Santana, and Jorge Soler. Those are hitters that I trust. I've got a decent amount of history with those guys. Sneaky Jared Dyson for 2,000 on FanDuel, 2,800. Sneaking into the 8th spot in the lineup. If you're building a ton of lineups, starting maybe from the mid-range, could you get down to like a Jared Dyson before we move on? Alex, is he in play for you?
Yeah. I mean, he's always someone I like because of the stolen base upside. He does lead the team on that, so I don't hate the call, but he is. Let's see. Do they have a confirmed lineup yet? Because
they do.
Yeah,
he's in the 8th spot.
Yeah, he's in the 8th spot.
So that would be more of a contrarian spot where if you have a Kansas City stack, he makes a ton of sense because you're just assuming they're going to get a lot of at-bats, but otherwise, maybe stacking only.
Yeah.
Makes sense. We are running short on time, so we'll move on. We've got Shane Bieber against Lucas Giolito, just another spectacular pitching matchup in this one. The game, the lowest total game on the board with two pretty good offenses in it. That just shows how great these pitchers are. 6.5 run total. Both teams, it's basically pick 'em in Vegas. What do we like from this one? I assume it's all about the pitchers, but do we have a favorite pitcher in this one? Is it Shane Bieber, and why? Max?
It's Shane Bieber for sure because he has the best swinging strike stuff in the game right now. He's throwing a lot more sliders this year, which ups his swinging strike rate even more. It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, he's your best upside pitcher. I actually have a note here on Giolito. that I did a little research today, and his fastball velocity was down 2 miles last start. It didn't matter because the Mariners are that bad, and they still struck out a ton. But versus a decent lineup here in Cleveland, I don't know how much I'm going to go to him. Like if a guy, his velocity was normal first start and then down 2 miles an hour, that's a little bit scary to me. Maybe he's nursing an injury. I'm not sure. But with so many good pitching options today, he's not one I'm going to go to.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if that's something that's hits him, we've seen the time that it took for him to go from top prospect through his struggles to being an ace. Something like that could have a major, major impact on how his stuff works. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah.
Alex, for you, we've got at the top of the board, we've got two significant starters at significant prices between Trevor Bauer, who we'll get to, and Shane Bieber. They're the two most expensive pitchers by a decent amount on DK. On FanDuel, Strasburg is in that tier near them. They rank the same way with Bauer on top and Bieber on the bottom on the pitcher's board. Do you have a preference between the two? Or are you looking to save money by going to Trevor Bauer, which is a weird thing to have to say?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think Bieber is the pitcher I have more confidence in the long run because his strikeout stuff is elite and all the peripherals back it up too. So he looks like kind of a bargain at this 10.7K on Draftkings and 11.2 on FanDuel. Matchup is a little bit of a negative, but then Chicago is in the 50s today, which is really good for pitching. So I think Bieber is an elite spot here. Bauer might be my preference just because the lineup Colorado is rolling out today has a lot of strikeouts. So he's a little bit cheaper, and I think he projects a little bit better because of that strikeout upside. So I think I'd be leaning towards Bauer.
Yeah, for sure. In a Colorado lineup that's been terrible on the road and terrible against right-handed pitchers for the last 2 years, at least. Anything to love? Look at us covering two games at once. Anything to love in the Indians-White Sox game from the bats with that ridiculously low total, two excellent pitchers? Max, are you maybe inclined to go toward the Indians bats given what you were looking into on Luke Giolito?
Yeah, large field GPPs out of mind and just hoping, I mean, obviously we don't hope anybody's injured, but if there is an injury there, maybe they hit him hard and get him out of there and then can go nuts against the bullpen at like zero ownership.
I like it. Alex, are you going to the Indian side of things? Any White Sox for you up against that spectacular Shane Bieber?
I think the weather conditions plus the tough pitching here makes this one tough to get to on the bat side.
Makes sense. Moving on, 2 games left on the board. Cincinnati against San Francisco. We've got the Reds coming into town in San Fran. Looks like a lot of wind blowing out to center field in San Francisco. We saw weird things with that park last year. It was one of EMAC's favorite topics through the year last year. Short sample size, but it turned from a pitcher's park into a hitter's park, which was interesting. We've got 2 excellent pitchers going. Well, one excellent pitcher and one guy who was excellent last year and is working on proving himself that it wasn't a fluke, proving that he is a contender to be a very good pitcher. So Luis Castillo going for the Reds, Kevin Gausman going for the Giants. Do we like the pitching in this one? Is anybody getting to either side of the bats? Max, why don't you take us away?
I mean, Castillo's your chalk here. Just way underpriced for who he is. Had a rough start in his first start, bounced back the second one. His swinging strike rate went back to 15%, which is where he usually is in the second start. I don't see any reason to not play him. His velocity was down a little bit in his first start as expected, but it's trending up, which is what you want to see. So I mean, Castillo is definitely a guy to play here, especially in cash games. Gausman, also a good pitcher. His swinging strike rate is down from last year. He's throwing more sliders than changeups. Changeup is what he used to get the tons of swinging strikes on against the lefties, which used to make him a reverse splits guy. Yeah, so I don't know how much I'm going to get to Gausman just because of all the other guys, but Castillo definitely here.
Yeah, Gausman projects interestingly for me today. I'm going to have to wrestle with him when I put him into Fantasy Cruncher and do my sorting process. One of my higher projected pitchers in that $8,700 price range on FanDuel. I think I would rather get to Woodruff. I think I'd rather get to Luis Castillo at 84. There are some other options around him that I would rather get to, but I think he's going to be in the mix. Max Fried as well at 7,600.
Sure.
I think I need to give a bump there and mix in. Any bats for you in this one, Alex? I've been getting to a decent amount of Cincinnati early in the season, but in a what historically is a pitcher's park, up against a pretty good pitcher. You getting any Cincinnati? Any love for a relatively weak Giants lineup coming back the other way against Castillo?
This one will depend on the lineup a little bit because Alex Dickerson's price is really low and Brandon Belt as well. So if they get high spots in the order because of this lefty versus righty matchup, they could be pretty good values. But overall, I'm not super enthusiastic about this one. Got solid pitchers, and although San Francisco, I mean, it's not as bad a batter's park as it used to be. It's still very cold temperatures today in the 50s. So I think we can find some better spots.
Yeah, a lot of lefties to like in the top of that Giants projected batting order anyway, which is interesting with Listella up there. Good, very good on base guy. Yastrzemski, Dickerson, Brandon Belt leading into Elvin Longoria, Brandon Crawford, and Buster Posey. A lot of professional veteran hitters in that lineup. Something to like if you like to talk about narratives and stuff like that. But I think for me, going up against Castillo, I think I'm much more on the pitching side in this one on both sides. I'll have some Reds, though, particularly assuming we get Jesse Winker. Actually, that lineup's confirmed. The Reds always do everything early. So I do like Jesse Winker coming off the top there, Nick Castellanos, Joey Votto. I can work in some Mike Moustakas, some Nick Senzel. So 1 through 6, I like that lineup. We need to, we got a minute. Max, you good on the Reds lineup? You rostering any of them before we jump to this last game?
No Reds. If you want to stack a Giants side just as a leverage stack, I don't mind those things on a slate like today when there's not a ton of good hitting options.
So I'm alone on the Reds. All right. Be me and the Reds at the top of the standings. I see how it is. Last game of the night. Got the Colorado Rockies coming into Los Angeles. 8-run total in this one. The Dodgers are massive favorites with the aforementioned Trevor Bauer on the hill. I don't like anything from the Rockies side of things, including the pitcher Antonio Sensatella, who I think the Dodgers are going to demolish. I think Trevor Bauer is going to carve up the Rockies here. Anything to like on the Rockies side of things, Max?
Nope. Pass.
Good answer. Alex, you seeing it the same way?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. All right. So talk to me about the Dodgers bats then, Alex. We know that Trevor Bauer is a great pick on the pitching side of things. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Talk to me about Dodgers bats. Are they a stack you're going to against Antonio Sensatella, Alex?
Yeah, I definitely think the Dodgers have a ton of talent. So they have one of the best lineups in the game. The conditions in LA aren't that great today either, which is what is keeping their team total around 5. And the pricing is very high here. So you might have trouble getting to the Dodgers plus an elite pitcher. But that's not a problem for me. I'm willing to gamble on some of the cheaper pitchers just to get a little differentiation from everyone else who's going to either Bauer or Bieber. So going to the Dodgers stack would be a reasonable way to spend that money.
Makes sense. Now, Max, with the Dodgers stack and what Alex just said about it being so expensive, which is very true across the board on both sites, we talked about the Tigers as being one of the bigger value spots on the board and a team that was coming up with decent power marks, decent offense, but probably going to be very, very highly owned on DK. Presumably, a lot of that is going to pairings with teams like the Dodgers. If you're using Fantasy Cruncher, let's say, and you get a lot of that pairing, is that something that you're maybe looking to get away from and start pairing them with a different team, even if it means maybe getting to some of the less expensive Dodger bats?
Yeah, for sure. Especially like if Mookie doesn't play, I think you're going to get a value bat in here, which will be nice to see. Like maybe if it's Beatty or something, I think he's like mega cheap on DK. And just the way to build GPP lineups is you have to have some leverage somewhere. You can't really go 2 chalk pitchers, the main chalk stack, and like a chalk Freeman stack with them. You have to differentiate somewhere. Either throw like an SP2 in there, or like Alex said, just don't play any of the high-priced pitchers and go to low-priced pitchers to go with your expensive stack. Just make sure you have some leverage in there. And I also just got a question: if on a slate like today, we think of building anywhere, like what stack sizes do we choose? So usually I'm always 5-man stacks in GPPs, just because that gives you the most upside. But I do see the point on a slate like this where there's not a lot of good spots for bats, going a couple 3-man stacks and filling in some one-offs around. So I don't know, is that something you guys are into on a slate like today?
That's interesting. I mix and match my different stack sizes and pairings, and we're running out of time. So let me throw that to Alex because everybody cares about his opinion a lot more. What do you do with that, Alex?
Yeah, I think with the stack sizes, like one of the big edges you can get is if you combine two teams in a way that might not be the easiest to do. So like the Dodgers are really expensive. So pairing them with another expensive stack might be impossible unless you relax some of the constraints with the stacking. So maybe that'd be when you go to maybe a 4-3 or 5-2 just to get that cheap 2K
Yeah.
guy, which can give you a really unique lineup feel.
For sure.
Excellent. I love it. That's a great question to end on. Guys, we're out of time. We hit all the games. We made it. We've got the NBA Deeper Dive coming up next with Lofty and Adam. Then we've got Live Before Lock coming up after that with Spags and Eric. Believe those are on the same stream, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So stick around. Tyler's nodding his head. Sounds like they're coming up on the same stream, guys. Stick around. Hit the like and subscribe down there. We're out of here. We appreciate it, everybody.